Well, hello again and welcome back. In the end I decided to make this into two videos, so this is now the second part, and thanks very much for watching, and hope to do more of these in the future anyway. The next model of Freeman that we're going to look at is the continuation on after that the Mark I wide beam ceased production in 1963, I should say. They commenced the 22-foot Mark II, which was slightly different in its form and shape, as you'll see by the pictures, and that became a truly immensely popular riverboat. I think something like 1,500 Mark II Freeman 22s were sold. There again, 7'6" beam, so those will not fit on narrow canals. There again, lovely interior. It had the matched wood ply, the high gloss finish, as you'll see in some of the pictures. And by the way, some of these pictures are of my boat, one of the Freemans I've had. I've had a number of Freemans over the years, and I will put on the pictures that this was my boat, and this is because I did do a lot of work on this boat. It was in a pretty rough state when I bought it. I think the Freeman 22 Mark II is one of my all-time favourite boats. It's a super starter boat. It's easy to manoeuvre, easy to handle. It doesn't tip about too much. It's got good stability. It's got a it's been designed. It's like the Mark I. The Mark II is a 4-berth. It has 2 singles or a double at the front, and then over the dinette it has a double berth. So it sleeps 4. It would take 4 adults or 2 adults and 2 children, whatever you want. To say it's possibility of sleeping 4 adults in quite comfort. It has a little toilet compartment, a wash basin and sink, and you can add on hot water and all this sort of extras. Some Freemans you'll find will already have those added. You can do as much or as little to these as you want. Some people keep them like a basic little day boat. Then people go off and spend a month on them, so they want the more luxuries like a fridge. You can have a fridge box in the cockpit, what you sit on, the helm position, then it makes a seat for the helm and have a fridge under that. And you can have more luxuries. You can take it as far as little as you want, and it depends what you're buying in the first place. The Mark II prices, there again, I've seen them as low as £3,000, and they might, for one that's had a lot of work on it, been probably re-engined with a diesel engine, in later life had a newer engine put in, you might £8,500, even touching 9, but that is getting top heavy again. I wouldn't go as far. It would have to be something really special to want to pay £9,000 for a Freeman 22 Mark II, but not beyond the bounds. I mean, you do see them advertised for that, but whether people actually ever sell them for that is another question. So as I say, the Mark II is a super boat, and widely available. You'll go to most river brokerage places, and there's going to be a Freeman of some sorts, and it'll more likely be a 22 Mark II. They were so, as I say, so many of them were built over the years, and there again, engine-wise, vast majority had the water motor 105E. That was basically the Ford Anglia car engine, which had been marinised by water motor. Later on, they had the 1100cc cross-flow petrol engine, which Ford had developed for the Ford Escort car, and then water motor marinised that, and it became what was known the water motor Seawolf 1100cc petrol engine. Some of them had a water motor Sea Tiger, which was a 1600cc, basically the car engine again, which had done to say, and it had there again the J-type water motor gearbox with just the forward and the backwards and the neutral position. Very easy to operate, very low tech stuff, very basic mechanics. And the engines are easy to look after. Naturally, one has to be careful with petrol on a boat, as I said in my first video about buying a GRP boat. and have a look at that. And you know, I might do a separate video on different fuels and my thoughts on the different fuels. But if you're careful and the petrol engine is looked after, and you have a bilge blower, a spark-proof bilge blower to vent the engine space, you can fit automatic fire extinguishers that if anything does go untowards, they go off in the engine compartment and hopefully smother any fire really quickly. There's lots of things you can do out there. Re-petrol engine boats, and because diesel engines are just as dangerous theoretically, they all run hot, it's all a fuel source. It's just that petrol is that little bit more volatile, and if one takes it sensibly, it shouldn't be a problem. I mean, gracious, these boats have been out there for 50-60 years and they're still out there and being used and being enjoyed. I think that's the way you have to look at it. So yeah, that's the Freeman 22 Mark II. So there again, interestingly, what they did in 1970, they ceased production of the Freeman 22 and actually cut the moulds down again from 7'6" beam to a narrow beam Freeman 22, which would there again fit the narrow beam locks on the canals. And it was called, that 22 was called, you know, it was sold primarily for canal use, and they became the later build Freeman 22s. And as I say, rather than being at 7'6", they are, you know, 6'10" or just thereabouts beam, and will fit the narrow locks. So there again, now there is some distinguishing features that if you're after a narrow beam Freeman 22, you can tell them apart from the earlier wide beam boats, because the later narrow beam 22s had a weed hatch at the back. If you lift the back seat up and look into the bilge by the rudder stock, you'll see a tube coming up with a clipped top on it, and that is a weed hatch, so you can put your hand down, take the top, unclip the top off, and put your hand down and theoretically clean any muck or dirt or weed or shopping trolleys, free anything off that you've got caught round your prop. So that's one distinguishing feature that, you know, means you've got a narrow beam F22 later build. And also the engine and propeller shaft were all in line. It's a straight line. The earlier Freeman 22 Mark IIs had a reduction offset, which is basically the engine to propeller is offset through a reduction drive. And so if your propeller and engine sit in a straight line, you know it's a later built Freeman 22 that was basically designed for the canals and is a more narrow beam. It doesn't mean you could take it on the river. I mean, you know, some people even take these little boats on the coast. I'm not, you know, whether that's up to every individual, but it's just a defining, you know, difference, and a way of finding out what boat you've got. And also the later Freeman 22 narrow beams didn't have an anchor chain pipe on the very front of the boat, on the very up by the stanchion rails. The earlier 22s had an anchor pipe, and you could have an anchor chain coming down to a box inside, whereas the narrow beam 22s didn't have any need, obviously being on an inland waterways on a, you know, placid canal. So there's no anchor chain pipe on the narrow beam boats, on the 22s. They were built, the Freeman Mark II 22s, it all gets numbers, doesn't it? Narrow beam were built from 1970 to roughly 1976 when they ceased production of those. I think it was a bit of a loss leader. I think there was only 58 made of that type, of the narrow beam type, because obviously they were very expensive. They were well fitted out boats. Narrow boats were just starting to come in, and so they were a bit of a loss leader in their time, really, I think, but a super little boat. So, you know, something worth looking at if you're looking, you know, or you have some waterways to cut through that are narrow beam. Have a look. You know, they are about, and they're often advertised as the narrow beam Freeman 22 Mark II. And the last model quickly I was going to have a look at was in 1970, when they stopped building the 7'6" wide Freeman 22 Mark II, they brought the Freeman 23 boat out, which had a bit more sort of vertical lineage to it and was slightly different. It didn't have the brake in the cabin, and that became a truly classic riverboat, the Freeman 23. There again, I off the top of my head, I think there was probably, you know, about 1,500 of those manufactured. I'm not sure. That's something I'd have to look in, and probably if I find that out, I'll put that up, how many were manufactured. But there are plenty of 23s, Freeman 23s out there. There again, they are 7'6" beam, and they're 20'3". They're a foot longer. So it made, what they basically did internally, they made the toilet compartment a little bit bigger, and a very nice boat, beautifully appointed again, with the high gloss, you know, matched interior, veneered wood with the highly polished, you know, varnish that they used. I believe it was a spray. Freeman used a spray-on varnish technique to get the high gloss finish, and a lot of that has survived. You know, some of it where it's had a lot of sunlight has gone, and in the cockpits it can get a lot of water damage, but you can revive that. And there's a great firm down in Molesford on the River Thames called Sheridan Line, who sell just about everything you'd ever want for your Freeman. They even manufacture some old parts still, and plus they sell all engine parts for the older engines in Freemans, and they even sell the matched Freeman plywood. So if your wood's gone too bad in the cockpit, if the water damage has, you know, through rain and condensation, if it's gone too bad, you can start again and repanel the whole cockpit and bring it back to, you know, how it was when it's new virtually. All the materials are there. There again, the Freeman 23 was had two berths at the front, or a double. The double over the dinette again, so a four-berth boat. As I say, it had a little bit bigger toilet compartment. I think it's virtually possible probably to get a shower in there if you wanted to fit one any time. I did fit a shower in my Freeman 22 Mark II. It was a bit tight, but I had a little shower tray made up, and if I've got some pictures I will put those in the pictures, and so you can do that. I fitted hot water, because I fitted a new diesel engine in there. I fitted a new Westerbeck diesel engine. I took hot water to a calorifier off the engine, and then obviously had hot water over the kitchen sink and a little shower in the loo compartment, which was great. But the Freeman 23 is a super boat. Many, you know, found their way on the rivers, on the River Thames. You'll still see loads on the River Thames, and I think the annual River Thames lot keepers used to vote what was their favourite boats, and I think the Freeman 23 won it many years in succession, because very popular boat, so well constructed, and it looks the right scale. It looks when you just stand and look at a Freeman, it looks well built, it looks quality. Nothing on it looks out of place. It all kind of marries in, if you get my drift. They obviously, you know, thought a lot about what they were doing, and they were built with a, you know, with a lot of care and attention, particularly the insides, you know. So super boats, Freemans, and as I say, just because there again, the Freeman 23 was mainly built with the water motor, cross-flow, Sea Wolf or Sea Tiger petrol engines. Some were built with Perkins 4107s, 4108 diesel engines, so they are about. You can find them, and there again, a lot of people have since, you know, re-engined these Freemans with Nanny or Westerbeck or Beta Marine diesel engines. So there are some, you know, boats out there that make really good value. If you find a Freeman with a newer diesel engine fitted, it's fair to presume then the owner that's done that is never going to recoup the money. Sure, the price will be higher than one with a petrol engine, but there's no way. If you think, when I bought my new diesel engine, the actual engine, and this is, I don't know, 10, 12, 13, 14 years ago now, the engine cost me £4,500. I only paid that for the boat. I was in the lucky position, I fitted the engine myself, I took the old engine out. The only thing I paid a couple of £100 to somebody to come and set it all up and align it to the propeller shaft for me, because that's a critical, to get that right, you need a lot of skill, and I hadn't got that. I hold my hand up, I haven't got that infinite skill to get it dead right in alignment. But that's all I did pay. I rewired the boat at that time. It obviously had a new engine panel, and as I say, I think that with the engine panel and the total cost of the new diesel was a Westerbick 30B 3-cylinder 30 horsepower diesel engine. Total all in with delivery, it was about £4,750. So it was over what I paid £4,500 for that little 22 when I bought it. So you can see you're never going to recoup your money, but I had the advantage of having a lovely boat that would start every time I went to it. It never smelt, it didn't vibrate a lot. It was so utterly reliable. The fuel economy was amazing on it, and in that respect it was well worth doing, but I never recouped my money to the extent when I sold that boat on, so one has to be careful. But coming back, I've done it, so I've wandered off again, but the Freeman 23, which we were talking about, is certainly well worth it. It's a lovely family boat if you've got a couple of younger children, and don't want to pay too much for money, but you want to get into boating, see if you like it. It's an easy boat to manhandle, it's dead easy at low speeds. They don't reverse very well because you get the paddle wheel side effect, as it's an inboard engine with a prop, but you get to know that, and you get to know your limitations, and it can be handy to bring the boat in either one side by going into reverse, and reverse will certainly stop you quick in a Freeman. And to say that you couldn't find an easier, more stable boat to start off boating in than any of the Freeman range. So that's my little look. I hope you've enjoyed that. As I wanted to keep this quite brief and to the point, we'll probably do another series. We might even come back and look at some other Freemans, some later Freemans, some that were built in the, later on in the late 70s and early 80s, before Freeman's finally finished in 1983. So there we go. I've rambled on quite enough for one day. So thanks for watching, as always. Please subscribe. Please comment. Do you like Freemans? Is there any other of us out there that still think they're a wonderful little boat? Anyway, with that, I will see you in a future video. And for now, I'll say goodbye.